A garden pond like this can bring a great deal of pleasure. You can just sit here and watch the dragonflies hovering and the frogs plopping in and out, but every few years they do need some attention. And this time last year I completely renovated this pond, and I'll show you how. Now I'm giving my little garden pond a makeover, and actually late summer, early autumn is a good time to do it, because by then all the breeding tadpoles and frogs, they've all grown up and left the pond, so it's quite a quiet time in here. Now my first job was to clear all the vegetation that had really choked it up and made it quite stagnant over the last few months. So every day this week I've been coming and I've been hauling out a new lump of vegetation like this, but then I've been leaving it just on the edge like that overnight. So if there is any pond life in there, it's got time to sort of crawl back in again overnight. Now I've finished most of my clearing now, and I've just got a little corner here of plants that I want to save and repot and revitalise a little bit. But my next problem is this is a concrete pond, and it's very straight-sided. It goes straight down to over a foot deep, and there are two problems with that. The first is that if anything like a hedgehog was to fall in here, it would have an awful job to get out. So what I'm firstly going to do is make sure that my little escape route for mammals is properly installed. So if they were swimming around in here, they've got a nice step and an easy way out of the pond. And the other problem is that this is a little bit too deep for marginal plants to get established in. They like to go around the edge in the soft mud, and I don't really have that here. So I'm going to create some artificial shelves, and I've just done this with a few bricks to raise it up a little bit, but I'm going to drop a tray in this end just to raise, so the plants in there are going to be a little bit higher, nearer the surface of the water. Repotting some of the plants that I salvaged from the pond, and I'm using these aquatic baskets which have got holes all the way around to let the roots have free access to the water. Each one is lined with a little bit of hessian like that, just to stop the soil getting through those gaps before the root has properly filled the pot. I'm using special aquatic soil, which is richer and slightly heavier. It's very gritty than normal compost, just to weight the pots down a little bit. Put a little bit in there. Starting with these iris, and I've trimmed them back to the fresh rhizomes and the roots, just as you would with a terrestrial iris. So I'm just popping those in there so the roots spread out. Now this is Iris fulva, and I got these in the Chelsea Flower Show sell-off from the Silent Pool gin stand a few years back. They looked absolutely stunning, and I was so pleased when they let me take them back. We're going to finish it off with a good thick layer of washed potting grit, again quite heavy like that, and that is just going to stop that soil floating away when you first lower it down into the pond, and it looks quite nice to it. It sets the plants off quite nicely like that. Now we come to the fun bit, which is planting it back up again. Now I'm starting with the plants that can take the full depth of the pond, and I've bought two new water lilies. One's already in, that's a white one called Albatross, and this is it's a slightly apricot one called Starbright. And I've checked with the nursery, and they can take the depth quite happily, and you'll see as I pop it in, the leaves bounce up to the top, so that's fine. I've also, just for continuity, potted up and put back in some of the vegetation that I pulled out in the first place that got out of control, but they're nicely in pots. So if it gets too much, I can just hoik that pot out. But that's for all the insects that are already in here that need a little bit of cover. This shelf has gone in with all the Iris fulva, and just let me show you the planting technique, because when you first drop them in, you need to do it very gradually, because there'll be a lot of water bubbling up. So you just sort of drop them into their place here, and just gradually let the pot fill out. You can see the bubbling now coming through, and then just push it down to the level that you want. Now in here in front of these, I want to plant a marsh marigold, beautiful bright yellow flowers, but that needs slightly shallower planting again. So I'm actually going to pop that on a brick here, just in front of the iris, and I've piled it up a little bit higher in its pot just to keep it out of the water, because really, again, it's a marginal plant. But that I'm just going to drop in there, just so all its roots are sitting in the water there. And don't forget, this is summer, so over winter this pond will deepen a little bit as the rainwater tops it up. And I might need to come and check these levels. If they're too submerged, I might need to put 1 or 2 bricks under them. This end, I've got another lovely iris. And this is again from a Chelsea flower show sell-off. That was from the Still Garden, designed by Jane Porter, and it's one of our native iris, Iris pseudocora, but it's a variety called Alba, which is much paler and prettier than the normal strident yellow that we get. And then just behind them, I've popped my carnivorous plants, but I put another slab under there because they just need really their feet in water. They can stay out all year, they're fine in a pond. Then last but not least, I've gone out and bought 3 little oxygenating plants. These will put oxygen in the bottom of the pond. I've potted them up, and for these plants they recommend that you gradually submerge them in the water. So I'm actually going to just pop them in here and pot them on top of the water lily pots, just to get used to being in the water like that. They've still got access to the sunlight. And then later on in the autumn, I'll be dropping them right down to the bottom as they've grown accustomed to the conditions. I think they'll grow quite well. This water's really lovely and warm, and you've got a couple of months of growing left. So I think come winter, everything will be very nicely established in this little pond. So this is the pond almost exactly a year later. And as you can see, it's got very well established. Both the water lilies have grown well, and they have actually flowered this summer as well. My oxygenating plants are now above the surface here. Marsh marigolds happily settled in. My 2 irises are both doing well. And the pond has really been a joy this summer. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and follow our blog at the3growbags.com.